The Suicide Squad spin-off slash sequel Peacemaker Episode 4 dropped today, giving more of a vulnerable look at the characters of Peacemaker and Vigilante instead of the action-packed one we got the last 3 episodes. Let's review, let's discuss Peacemaker Episode 4. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, the Viking. Make sure you give a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for brand new videos every single day. When James Gunn jumped from Marvel to DC, many fans were upset because they did not like his style as a director, and they looked at it like a Marvel guy coming to DC, and plus his tweets from like 10 years ago. But I was open to the idea, because yes, Marvel is successful, it's the biggest franchise maybe ever, but their directors and their creative team is handcuffed to a formula. And now I will say in phase 4 of the MCU, they seem to be taking more risks. But with James Gunn coming over to DC, the Warner Brothers executives, yes, it may be hypocritical in a way, but they were going to give him so much freedom because he's a billion-dollar Marvel director. And it's hypocritical towards directors like Zack Snyder and David Ayer, who they made cut so much out of their movies. But that's the reason that the Snyder Cut movement was born, was to give directors, writers, the creative freedom that they should have. And now that James Gunn is getting that, many fans are pissed at him and pissed at this show and the Warner Brothers executives for giving him creative freedom, something that we wanted them to give their creators. So it's very confusing at times, and it's very touchy with people. I can understand, because Zack Snyder's not working with DC anymore. He didn't get that creative freedom, and now he's at Netflix. I understand the frustration, but it's good to see somebody like James Gunn get this freedom. Matt Reeves the same, and hopefully the Black Adam director and James Wan with Aquaman 2, and we get the best possible movies and shows that we can get. And Peacemaker, for me, I'm really enjoying the show. As I've said, I'm a huge fan of John Cena. I've watched him since I was a young guy, a young kid, watching wrestling. I loved him. I followed him into his movie career, and I think he's doing an awesome job. But I think that the character of Peacemaker was made for him. He's not the best actor in the world, but he works hard at his craft, and I think he's perfect for Peacemaker. And this show is hugely enjoyable, from the soundtrack to the performances to the engaging story. I just love it so much. I really wish I could binge watch this series because I'm so invested to this story. I thought it would be more of a grounded character study with Peacemaker, and it is that, also with characters like Vigilante, but the story is actually big. It's as big as the Suicide Squad. There was a massive Starro in the Suicide Squad movie, and here we learn about these butterflies as well, and they're all over the world. I think the references towards the Justice League in terms of Aquaman and Batman is very funny. I do enjoy this. Many people are like, this is disrespectful to the characters. I'm like, not really, when it suits the tone of the character and the story that's being told. What was disrespectful to those characters was Justice League 2017, not Peacemaker. And I did like in this episode how we got to see more of Vigilante. It felt more like a Vigilante episode in a show that's called Peacemaker than a Peacemaker episode in a show that's called Peacemaker. But I didn't mind it whatsoever because the actor did a pretty good job. And this episode was just about calming down, learning more about the characters, because it brings stakes to the actual series. Because when something bad happens to these characters, you feel for them. And it puts you in more of a position to care for them in the time that we get to see them vulnerable. And you get to see that with Vigilante, especially near the end of the episode where he feels bad. And especially when we find out stuff about Peacemaker's brother and what might have happened there as well. Those scenes hit harder because the show takes the time to explore these characters. And it's not just a big action spectacle. It's a character study of these vulnerable, messed up characters that aren't good guys. And they aren't really bad guys either. They're kind of caught in the middle. And we're exploring that for this entire show. And my favourite scene from the Suicide Squad movie was the scene between Joel Kinnaman as Rick Flag in the fight sequence with John Cena's Peacemaker, where John Cena is trying to cover up this big conspiracy because he was sent by Amanda Waller with a different intent to cover up the Project Starfish, or Starro, whatever it was called, because it would have made the American government look bad. And Peacemaker's vision is to get peace at any cost, and he will kill any man, woman, and child just to do that. And Rick Flag has been working for America for his whole life. That is his way. But he got to a point where he was like, this isn't right. This is bad. I'm going to expose all of this. And then Peacemaker was basically like, I can't let you do that. I was sent here to protect my country at all costs. I have to take this fight from you. And then they fought because, Rick Flag knew the only way out for him to be alive was to kill Peacemaker. So he fought him, and Peacemaker won, and he killed Rick Flag. And just before Rick Flag is about to die, he says, Peacemaker, what a joke. And I love that line so much because it's something that would be like in the first phase of the DCEU in terms of Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Wonder Woman, and what Zack Snyder's Justice League would have been, or maybe even his Watchmen movie. And funnily enough, the Watchmen character of comedian is basically Peacemaker because Alan Moore, the creator of Watchmen, wanted to use the character like Peacemaker as his comedian, but DC or whatever the comic strip at the time, wherever owned it, didn't want him to do that. So then he created the Watchmen series, and comedian was basically Peacemaker. And we get to see that here and here again because, we get to see even in Zack Snyder's Watchmen movie where he is like, it's all a joke. And now we have Peacemaker being told that he's a joke. So I love the layers to this big time. And I think Kevin Smith said it beautifully as well in a way. He said that, look, it's annoying that we don't get the Snyderverse in a world where we don't get the Snyderverse. What James Gunn is doing through his vision, through his eyes, is pretty damn good. It's not a replacement. It's not exactly in the Snyderverse, but it kind of is as well. And I do appreciate this because for me, James Gunn is more than just dick jokes and stuff. Yes, there is that in this series, but I think there's more layers to these characters. And I think TV is showing James Gunn's writing in a way better way than, say, Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2, and maybe even Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which is a send-off to Marvel, because I can see this man coming over to DC full-time. I can see Peacemaker getting a Season 2, I can see him developing other shows, he's already confirmed that, and he will 100% direct another DC movie down the line, whether it's Justice League Dark, whether it's the Suicide Squad 3, or whatever he will call it. But I think his heart very much is with DC right now, because he is getting that creative freedom, and that's what we've wanted from the Snyderverse era. We've wanted the directors to get that 100%. And yes, there is some bias because a lot of those executives do not like Zack Snyder, and that's frustrating. I am in the same boat. I hate that so much. But he's also this successful Marvel director that came over to DC. And yes, the Suicide Squad movie didn't hit hard or anything in terms of the box office, but it got really good critical reviews and fan reviews as well, and we're told that it did pretty well on HBO Max. And you have to remember, the next phase of Hollywood and movie making is not just theatrical, it's also streaming as well. And we've seen some Samba TV numbers that suggest that Peacemaker is already a big hit after its first 3 episodes. And I think there's a number of reasons for that as well, because HBO Max is slowly building with the help of Zack Snyder's Justice League, of course. That was a big hit for that, even though they won't come out and say it was, but they kind of have as well, because that global phenomenon video came out. It was a big hit, we all know that. But in terms of HBO Max is building up, John Cena has a pretty good box office record in terms of sales at home. With WWE, his box office pay-per-view numbers were insanely great. He was the biggest star of WWE. And then if you look at his movie, I think it was titled Vacation Friends, that came out on Hulu. That is the most watched original movie on Hulu ever. So this guy obviously has a fan base, and I think he would do better on streaming and pay-per-view than he would maybe theatrically with original movies and stuff like that. I know I'm on a big rant here, but the reason I'm laying down all of this information is to show you that this show is absolutely great, and for James Gunn to get more sequels to what he's doing is justified in my opinion because of the output he is putting out. And Zack Snyder, of course, was treated bad and stuff like that. And it's so annoying when you're a huge fan of him. But I'm so happy he's at Netflix right now because he's going to kill it over there. He is going to kill it big time. And as Kevin Smith said, this is pretty darn good as well if Zack can't come back. And I agree. And you may disagree. Let me know below 100%. Have a civil conversation about it because we all respect each other and I want a good environment where we can talk about this stuff. But let's talk about Peacemaker episode 4. And I do think this show is the best DC show I've watched. 100%. Not just in terms of the budget or the action, but in terms of the writing and the layers and just the way everything is mashed together to make such a compelling show. I'm enjoying it big time. Okay, this article right here about episode 4 is from GameRant.com. Go to the link in the description if you want to read this for yourself. When it comes to the 4th episode of the HBO Max series Peacemaker, James Gunn dialed things back a notch. While the first 3 episodes of Peacemaker were all about setting the stage for the rest of the season, episode 4 was aimed at showing a bit more of the backstory of 2 of the main characters. It says something about just how good Gunn is that an episode that slowed things down the way it did was still as enjoyable as when the series is going all out. Of course, part of the reason the latest episode is just as good as the first 3 episodes of Peacemaker is the humour continues to be over-the-top craziness mixed with some truly interesting insight into the characters that are on the screen. Of course, the code less travelled focuses on 2 characters more than most and dives deeper into the daddy issues that drives both Peacemaker and Vigilante. And taking that deep dive, the show manages to make the audience feel sorry for 2 people who do not bat much of an eye when it comes to killing anyone that gets in their way. Peacemaker and his terrible upbringing take centre stage. Now in episode 4, the HBO Max series continues to walk the line between backstory and staying in the present in a masterful way. The audience continues to learn more and more about Christopher Smith and why he became the Peacemaker, almost entirely through exposition and what could be seen as throwaway lines if someone isn't paying enough attention. The show also does a very good job of showing exactly why Smith shouldn't be nearly as loyal to his father as he is, and yet he continues to stand by him. The audience saw some of that in the first episode of Peacemaker when he and his father are talking in his dad's house, expertly played by Robert Patrick. The elder Smith does nothing but lob insults at his son, in no uncertain terms. He makes it clear that he has no feelings other than disappointment or hatred for his boy, and yet it makes perfect sense that Peacemaker keeps coming back for more. The show also lays out that everyone else in the ragtag bunch of characters is doing the same thing that the audience is when it comes to the man who was once the racist supervillain, the White Dragon. The back and forth between Peacemaker and Vigilante as they're driving to the jail is one of the best moments of the series that has an absolute ton of great moments in just 4 episodes. Of course, because the 2 men in the conversation are deeply damaged people, the conversation takes a turn from why are you still supporting that man to why won't you kill him? And because of that way, the characters are laid out. Vigilante, wondering why Peacemaker isn't killing his father in cold blood, seems to make a lot more sense. Peacemaker's family issues aren't the only ones that are covered in the code less travelled. Though when looking at what happened with Vigilante, it's much less direct and done in a much funnier way. When the 2 are arguing about fathers and Peacemaker tells Freddie Stroma's Vigilante that his dad isn't actually gay but just wanted to get away from his son, Stroma's character acquiesces almost immediately. In fact, he's so willing to believe that his dad leaving the family was more about his hatred for his son than finding love somewhere else that it actually makes Peacemaker give a little side eye and take a beat. Layers upon layers. The conversation between Peacemaker and Vigilante is just part of what makes this episode so good. There's also this unfolding of the world in this show that also gives audiences a look at what it's really like to be someone like Peacemaker just living in an everyday world. The explanation of the weapons room and how it's so big, delivered in a matter-of-fact explanation as if it should be rather obvious, tells more about the world than people might realize at first blush. There is also the one conversation between Augie Smith's neighbour and Peacemaker might be the single best summing up of how discordant Batman's personal code is with the violence that exists in the rest of the DC Comics world. Of course, that particular conversation where Peacemaker explains how the Dark Knight is putting people in danger by constantly taking people like the Joker to jail rather than just killing them apparently angered the higher-ups at DC. It's a safe bet that Gunn doesn't care and wasn't about to take that scene out, because it really does also help explain why Peacemaker and Vigilante do what they do the way that they do it. It also fills out the character in a way that wasn't really made clear in the Suicide Squad, where he just looked like a guy who liked killing everyone he ran across. The show has done a fantastic job of making an anti-hero a truly pitiable person. The same can be said for Vigilante, who has been very well established as someone who strives for acceptance from Peacemaker. And that's best shown when he bursts into tears at the end of the episode, knowing that he's likely hurt that relationship. It showed that there's quite a bit more to the man otherwise known as Adrian Chase, and it keeps peeling back the layers in a way that makes the character compelling. Finally, there's the peeling back of layers of the plot that is surprisingly secondary but still plenty interesting. There's the Peacemaker supporting cast in Maher, Harcourt, Economist and Adebayo. Adebayo especially appears to have more going on than what's going on the surface. Despite proclaiming that she's not a killer, she has a very good shot. The mystery behind that character, who has already been shown lying to just about everyone around her, is just going to be something the audiences will want to unravel as well. In short, all the pieces of this series continue to come together in a fantastic and incredibly entertaining way that should leave viewers counting the minutes until the next episode. That's what I'm talking about with this show. It's not just a DC superhero show. Yes, it has those cool action sequences and monsters and stuff like that, but there's more to it. It's about pulling back the layers of these vulnerable characters like Peacemaker and Vigilante. And many people can relate to these characters because they're not superheroes with superpowers. They're men who have done bad things and are very vulnerable because of things that we can relate to. Daddy issues, trouble with your parents, stuff like that. So I think the show is doing a fantastic job, and I love this episode so much because it wasn't about, look at this joke, look at that thing, oh my god. It was actually about looking at these characters and what's going on with them and why it's happening. And for me, that's great writing than just a massive action sequence or a cool dance number, cheesy dance number at the start. This pulling back the layers is what makes this, for me personally, the best DC show I've watched. And you may disagree, and you may think, well, there's more episodes to come. I know there is, but I can only see the show getting better right now than what it is, and that's saying a lot. But I want to go through kind of each point of the episode and give kind of my opinion about it, different phases and different things that happened, and just talk about them in more detail. So Maher's frustration with Peacemaker leads to Chris being forced to confront his issues from episode 3 after not being able to pull the trigger on the senator and his children. Peacemaker has to think about why he doesn't do it. So I did like that because, Peacemaker will use the excuse that it didn't have my peace symbol on it. That's why I couldn't do it. I didn't know enough about the information. But I think ever since Rick Flag told him, Peacemaker, what a joke, he's questioning his own personality and what he stands for and who he is. And I think it will get to the stage of this series where Peacemaker won't be Peacemaker anymore. He'll actually become Rick Flag. And I find that very, very exciting. I also really liked when Peacemaker went to his dad's house to get some helmets, and then he learns his dad's actually in prison. But there was a nice exchange with the neighbor where they talk about Batman and stuff like that. That was very funny. But I also really liked how Vigilante, even though he cares for Peacemaker and wants his acceptance, he called him out over his dad. His dad's a racist and you still see him, you still work with him. What is that about? I really like that because Peacemaker, he sees his dad as his family, but he's questioning that all the time now. Eventually he'll probably turn on his dad. He'll have to, or his dad will turn on him completely. So Peacemaker's going to go see his dad in prison, but Maher doesn't like this at all because it could jeopardize the mission. So he sends Adebayo to go stop Peacemaker, and she basically gives him a speech saying your dad is bad. But I like the mirror between the two of them because Adebayo and Peacemaker, both of their parents are pretty bad people. And maybe she doesn't understand that her mom, Amanda Waller, is as bad as she is, or maybe she does, but will not accept it. And that's exactly what Christopher Smith is going through as well with his dad. So I do enjoy that parallel between those two big time. And as you can see, parents are a big thing about this show, as they have been in Man of Steel, in Wonder Woman, in Batman v Superman, in Zack Snyder's Justice League, in the Snyder era of these DC films. Parents were so important to the stories, and in Peacemaker, that hasn't changed at all. It even happened in Aquaman, in Shazam. So that's pretty cool how that kind of trend has stayed throughout the DCU from 2013 to 2022. And maybe some fans are in denial and they won't really appreciate that much. But Christopher Smith, Peacemaker, won't listen to her, and he goes in to see his dad anyway. And do we think that Adebayo manipulated Vigilante to get arrested to go in and kill Peacemaker's dad? Because she said it very subtly, but maybe that was her intention, was to make him think that was the best thing for Peacemaker, and he goes to try and assassinate Peacemaker's dad, but fails. And while Peacemaker's having the conversation with his dad, he basically gets told he's just worth nothing, which was pretty hard to look at. I do like the character of Judo Master, who was captured from episode 3, but he escaped and we got a rematch between Peacemaker and Judo Master, which was pretty funny and entertaining and well done, but it's funny because of the height difference between the two actors. And of course the muscle mass difference is just funny to me. But Judo Master is about to tell Peacemaker the conspiracy about the butterflies, because Peacemaker hasn't been told anything. He's just been sent on this mission with no information whatsoever. But before Judo Master can spill the beans, Adebayo steps in and shoots him, and she says that she's never killed anyone before, but she has a pretty good shot. And it looks like, again, she is deliberately covering up this butterfly conspiracy for her mother, because I think Adebayo is Peacemaker of Peacemaker, the same way Peacemaker was Peacemaker of the Suicide Squad, where he was on a side mission thanks to Amanda Waller. I think Adebayo is on something similar for her mom to cover up something deeper and much, much bigger. But my favourite part of this entire episode was near the end, where you have the song House of Pain by Faster Pussycat playing in Peacemaker's home. He's dancing to it, but he's getting flashbacks to past traumas. His dad making him kill somebody for the first time, the death of his brother, and of course Rick Flag saying, "Peacemaker, what a joke," and he falls to the floor and he starts to cry. I love this show. We also got to see the butterfly from episode 3. He's in a jar, or she's in a jar, whatever it is, it's in a jar. And also Eagly is there too. So he didn't kill the butterfly, and he's trying to figure out what exactly is going on. We get shots, of course, of Vigilante, who's been picked up from the prison. He starts to cry because of what he did to Peacemaker in terms of their friendship. And it was such a good, well done scene. We also have, of course, the character of Maher, and it's revealed that he is actually a butterfly, or he has a butterfly inside of him. So what exactly is going on with that character? I did think he was alien of some form, but I didn't think he would be a butterfly. So I don't know what he's trying to cover up or what he's trying to end or start. I don't know. Maybe he's against the butterflies even though he's a butterfly. So that's something that we're definitely going to have to go back to in future episodes. And it sets so much up for episode 5 and just the rest of this season. And that's what makes it so interesting, because yes, it's a character study taking back the layers of these characters, but the story is huge. But there's also more to the death of his brother, which is pretty interesting. Was his dad the one who killed his brother, or did Peacemaker kill his brother? How exactly did he die? But it affects him in such a huge way that we'll find out more about as well. And you feel bad for the character of Peacemaker, and you can understand why he was that way in the Suicide Squad and why he wanted to cover up the big conspiracy for America and Amanda Waller. And he is put into a position right now where all of this stress and past trauma is catching up with Peacemaker, and it's really, really affecting him. As I said, I could definitely see Peacemaker by the end of this series becoming what Rick Flag was trying to become at the end of the Suicide Squad, and Peacemaker stopped that. That would be amazing in terms of full circle with the character. But guys, that's my thoughts on Peacemaker episode 4. I really like the character study, pulling back these layers of these vulnerable characters. The other side stories are interesting as well. The bigger arc of the butterflies, it's all very compelling, and I can't wait to see where it goes next. But guys, thanks for watching this video. Really appreciate it. Thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, but get into the comment section. Let me know your thoughts on Peacemaker episode 1 to 4. Very intrigued. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next video.